So being born in the 90s, I feel like every movie that I watched growing up, and one of them that comes to mind is Austin Powers. Austin Powers produced one of the most incredible memes that we still see to this day, and that's Dr. Evil, the Pinky, $1 billion. And why I bring that up is because every movie that I feel like I can remember watching growing up was all about the takeover. And we see that even going into the 2000s, where the social networking, it's all about power, it's about control, and really taking over and soaring as high as you can in a capitalist market. Why I'm bringing this up is because we have now seen a takeover take place with ESPN and NFL Network. And this is bigger than people realize. And that's why we are here today. I'm your host, Matthew Raridan, and this is the Snap Count Show. What's going on, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Snap Count Show, where we dive into everything NFL before the snap. I'm your host, Matthew Raridan, and with me today, as always, is none other than David Street,
Hello from my car.
Ed Smith,
Heyo.
and Thaddeus Lloyd.
Hello.
Well, guys, there's been a lot of headlines going on in the NFL. This is Super Bowl week. I do not want to cloud that because this is Super Bowl week approaching us. This is the last week of regular NFL football before the offseason. So that is big. Don't let this be clouded of that. But there are several things that we do need to talk about leading up to this Super Bowl and to the offseason, actually. First thing that I do want to talk about before we get into the whole ESPN NFL Network ordeal is the head coaching vacancies have now all been but filled. And I was really curious before we did this show is of the last two positions because you have the Oakland Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders. Sorry, I'm still living back in the days. I still call them the Oakland Raiders, the San Diego Chargers. I don't know about these new homes. This is all weird to me. But the Las Vegas Raiders, who hold the number one overall pick and is expected to draft Fernando Mendoza, had yet to have an NFL coach. It's just crazy. And then the Arizona Cardinals, also a lack of direction and leadership, didn't have one either. Well, that has changed now as we have now seen the newest reports of Klint Kubiak from the Seattle Seahawks, who are in the Super Bowl, going to be the new head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, whereas Mike LaFleur, not Matt LaFleur from the Packers, but Mike LaFleur to be the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. And I want to start actually with the Arizona Cardinals, Ed, because this has really been a very interesting team because we still do not know what direction they're going to take with Kyler Murray. Do they keep him? Do they get rid of him? Surely that had to have been a deterring factor for any head coach or coach to take over this team, right?
Absolutely. And it's a question that has to be answered within the next, I would say, 30 to 45 days, because the turnover of the NFL calendar, once that hits, you've got to have all your ducks in a row. You have to have a clear plan in place, and to have the Cardinals wait this long to finally get the guy that is willing to take the job, because at this point, that's what it is. They're willing to take the job because there are so many qualified head coaches that are out there that passed on this job because it is a such an unknown. And the history that we see with the Cardinals is they have a tendency to take these coordinators and see if they become great head coaches, really chasing the Matt LaFleur uh, idea, the Sean McVay idea of get a young up and coming coordinator and hope that he becomes the guy that is a top flight head coach in this league.
No, the league itself has been doing that, hoping to find the next one, the next Sean McVay. And you can't keep chasing that. But I will say this, we talk about coaching trees, and there are some very legendary coaching trees. And now the Sean McVay coaching tree is becoming a real thing. And Mike LaFleur is coming off that coaching tree from the Los Angeles Rams. And it could be what they need down there in Arizona. They went from a defensive minded head coach in Gannon to now an offensive minded head coach. And sometimes it is that change that really makes a difference. I know the Super Bowl this year, you have two defensive minded head coaches, but that doesn't always mean everything. And you look at these hires that we're going to be talking about in the NFL, and it's a lot of offensive minded coaches getting these head coaching jobs. So maybe maybe we're going to start seeing a trend here. But Thaddeus, speaking of offensive coaches, Klint Kubiak, who you're used to seeing 2 times a year with Seattle, now going to the Raiders, and they hold the number one pick. So you have to think that he's going to come into this building with a lot of knowledge and a lot of great things for Fernando Mendoza, who we are assuming is that going to be that number one pick, correct?
Yeah, I think it was actually a surprisingly good hire. Obviously, like the people were wondering what the Raiders were gonna do because they were waiting a bit a while after the first two or three major head coaches got hired, and they turns out they were just waiting for the Seahawks to make it to the Super Bowl, apparently. So I think it should be a good hire. The Raiders just have been a mess since John Gruden left, basically. So they have a lot of really good pieces on the offensive side of the ball, which should help out Klint Kubiak a lot. They might even have more offensive talent than the Seahawks do. It's just they need to fix the O line and they need to get a really good defensive coordinator. The defense has also been in shambles, so they obviously have some stuff to do. But if Klint can do what Kellen Moore did for the Saints last year, I think it should be a really good stepping stone for them.
Well, and I want to say I think the NFL is actually in great hands because there's a lot of young coaches that this cycle got passed up on. Chris Shula from the Rams, Nate Schillhouse, I think that's how you pronounce his name. I could be butchering that. He got passed up on. There is a decent list out there of young up and coming coordinators that did get passed up, but at the same time, to play devil's advocate, we could have an issue, David, because you are seeing a lot of people growing very impatient and you're seeing the one and dones or the 2 years and they're out. Where do you see the state of the NFL right now with these head coaches? Are they giving them enough time or not enough time at all?
Well, I think it really kind of just depends on the context. Like, for instance, I think in the case of Pete Carroll, I mean, probably easy to say this in hindsight, but I think everybody can see that that was a disastrous hire from the very beginning because it's obvious that Las Vegas was not going to get early 2010s uh, Pete Carroll. And then you look at a team like the Cleveland Browns who fired Kevin Stefanski, even though Kevin Stefanski is, without question, the best coach that Cleveland has had in a long time. And you have to wonder if, with a guy like Kevin Stefanski, if maybe that was as good as it was going to get for the Browns. But at the same time, I understand that with a guy like Miles Garrett still in his prime, you want to try to get somebody who can, get you over that hump or kind of take you to that next step. And by the way, I just want to say real quick about Clint Kubiak. I think he would have been a great hire for pretty much any team. One thing I have heard about Clint Kubiak, and I could be wrong. This is just something that I've heard, so don't quote me on this. I have heard that Klint Kubiak is not exactly the most vocal guy, which can be a weakness depending on how you're looking at it. Like, he's not, I mean, he's not a Dan Campbell type where he can motivate you with the sound of his voice. He's very much a guy who leads by example, leads with his results, so not much of a vocal guy. So, depending on how you look at that, that could be a weakness or that could be a strength. Again, that's just something that I've heard.
Yeah, but sometimes they may just need the right environment. But we're going to see. We can't expect results immediately with the Raiders, just as I feel like we couldn't expect to see results immediately with the Titans, and look what they did there. With firing their head coach halfway through the year, it's almost like there's a curse if you draft a quarterback first overall. These last couple of times, their head
Right.
coaches don't even make it through the full season. So, uh, but a lot of these young coaches, the Ben Johnson, Liam Cohen, all these in their first years actually made it to the playoffs. Some of them made great playoff runs. So
Yeah.
it things are looking good for those type of hires, and I think a lot of these teams are hoping to see those same results.
I
Yeah.
will, I will jump in and say that some of the best coaches are ones that are not hugely vocal or outgoing or loud or anything like that. Tony Dungy is a Hall of Fame head coach, and he barely rose his voice above what I'm speaking right now. So that isn't necessarily a bad thing. What I do uh, what I do expect out of Clint Kubiak, though, is being able to say the right thing, not necessarily the loudest thing. And
Mm.
that is the difference between the better head coaches versus ones that are kind of ducks on a pond where they're just treading water and hopefully getting through the season.
Ed,
Right.
I
Right.
Ed and David, you could chime in too on this question because you guys
Sure.
are college football fans. I know this is kind of out from left field, but who do you see college football coaching wise making the next big jump to NFL?
Ooh. Um, I'm gonna say it. Kurt Signetti.
Ooh, well, yeah, I'm not an NFL guy according to him, but sometimes when the dollars come, that could change.
I mean,
Yeah,
I I gotta say Kurt Signetti because look at the way that he turned around. Look at the way he turned around a bottom feeding program like Indiana, and he did it with you know like basically running his team like in the NFL. Getting all these college football free agents through the transfer portal and whatnot. And I think the way that he's coached, the way that he's kind of set things up, would make him a perfect fit for the NFL.
Yeah, so what you're saying is the Browns should have called him.
Yeah.
I'm gonna point to Marcus Freeman. His program at Notre Dame is more of an NFL based program as far as his schemes, his the way that he trains his players, what you expect out of his teams. So for that reason, I would say Marcus Freeman's going to be the next college head coach to make the jump. It's just a different sport, so it takes some time. Even when Nick Saban went to the Dolphins, that was a tough thing for him to overcome being a college guy in an NFL program.
Oh, absolutely. It is a different breed. It really is. But I would probably agree with you, Ed, because I do see a lot of similarities to a Marcus Freeman to a Mike Vrabel of how they coach, how they are involved, young defensive guys who have played, at a high level. So I would almost agree there too. But I don't want to change sports. But David knows in MLB, you saw uh, Tony Vitello jumped from Tennessee over to the Giants. I mean, that
Yeah.
has never been done before. Someone who had never had head,
Yeah.
head coaching or any type of experience in the majors go and get this head coaching or manager
Yeah.
job in the MLB.
Oh, absolutely. And then I wanna add one more point about Signetti that I think is important to make. Indiana is the first team in the modern era to win the manner in which they did. And what do I mean by that? Well, how did teams win before? They won with recruiting, and then it became recruiting plus the transfer portal. You look at Indiana, they did not have a top 30. I don't think they even have a top 40 recruiting class under Signetti, right? And yet they still were able to win the national title. And so because of that, it's the closest, it's the closest to the NFL that we see. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean, I would be interested to see if and how many actual NFL teams did contact him. I'm sure that may come out at one point, but just curious because I think some NFL teams, we've seen crazy things. Philip Rivers interviewed for the Buffalo Bills head coaching job, which Joe Brady ended up getting. So we've seen crazy things happen. So I'd be curious about that. But Thaddeus, I'm going to read off this list of the coaching hires. And after I read it off, I want you to tell me early prediction. Who do you think, what team do you think got it the most right? So we're going to start Arizona Cardinals with Mike LaFleur coming over from the Rams offensive coordinator position. The Falcons, Kevin Stefanski, the Browns' old head coach. Ravens, Jesse Minter, the Chargers' defensive coordinator. Buffalo Bills, Joe Brady, internal hire, their offensive coordinator. The Cleveland Browns with Todd Monken, who was the Ravens' OC. The Raiders, which we talked about with Klint Kubiak, the Seahawks offensive coordinator. Miami Dolphins with Jeff Hafley, the Packers defensive coordinator. Sorry, Ed. The Giants with John Harbaugh coming over from the Baltimore Ravens head coaching position. The Steelers, Mike McCarthy, who came over from the Cowboys, but a couple years
And the
prior.
Waffle House.
Yeah, the Waffle House. And then lastly, right now, the Tennessee Titans with Robert Saleh coming over from the 49ers defensive coordinator. Thaddeus, which one jumps out to you as to being probably the most right at the moment?
At the moment, it's hard to say because I feel like looking at the list here, I feel like half of them are just like okay-ish hires, and then the other half are probably good hires. Like I can't point to like a definitive one. Like obviously, with Mike McCarthy and John Harbaugh, they're both Super Bowl winning head coaches, but they haven't won those Super Bowls. It's been over a decade since either one won those Super Bowls. So you're like, where is the current credibility of those coaches, right? I mean, they both had winning programs, so it's hard to say. Obviously, we got a lot of new faces on here: Jesse Minter, Joe Brady, Todd Monken as new head coaches. So and there's a lot of like coordinators who became head coaches as well. I don't know how much I can trust those people. Like, obviously, they got hired because they seemingly did a good job last year. But was it the talent of the roster, or was it their actual offensive coaching, or was it the head coach, who was pulling the strings a lot? Which is what we've seen from, especially like the Sean McVay tree. It's a lot of former Sean McVay coordinators who just haven't done, a lot of good things. So my choice for probably the best hire currently is probably Kevin Stefanski to the Falcons. It got a little bit stale. A couple of these coaches got fired because it got a little stale in the organization. Obviously, Kevin Stefanski leaving the Browns, it was a big thing, because he's been one of their better coaches they've had. It's just the team has just fallen apart, whether it be ownership or the players themselves. Stefanski he's had an up and down, but I see him. I think he's better than Kevin O'Connell. Actually, I think he's a really good coach, and I think he can really help elevate the Falcons' offense, which has a lot of good pieces on it, and they already have a good defense. I don't know if Jeff Ulbrich is staying as the Falcons' defensive coordinator, but he did a really good job with Raheem Morris last year for the Falcons' defense. They had a really good defense last year.
Well, it's kind of a loaded question, and Ed could help out a little bit more with this because of what I asked you. But sometimes it also depends on who these coaches bring along. I know that this team I'm about to mention is not going to be making the playoffs by no means next year, but you're going to see improvement, and that's going to be the Tennessee Titans. Bringing in Robert Saleh, who's a defensive-minded coach, but they brought in Brian Daboll to help out on the offensive side of the ball with a young Cam Ward. So, Ed, do you think that's true? Is it's also of who they bring with them that helps really make it a good position?
Absolutely, it's who they bring with them because there's been such turnover in the NFL coaching ranks that you've got a lot of coaches out there that have head coaching experience going back to their side of the ball and taking over that section of the organization. So when you have say an offensive head coach like a John Harbaugh, and I'm sorry, Mike McCarthy, and he goes out and immediately gets a defensive coordinator. Guess what that coordinator is going to do? He is going to run the defense like he's a head coach. So there's that portion of it where there's been such turnover in the NFL coaching ranks that you have a lot of coordinators that should be coordinators that have head coaching experience, and the head coach for that organization is then able to let that coordinator handle his side of the ball and kind of hands off so they can handle everything else. So Patrick Graham in Pittsburgh, he's going to be the head coach of the defense. Uh, the the first uh, example I can give where that really became a huge thing was the 85 Bears with Mike Ditka as the head coach, but Buddy Ryan was the head coach of the defense. They did not talk to each other the entire 85 season, and that's been well documented. Well, a lot of that's happening now with these new head coaching hires that are being elevated from coordinator positions. They are going out and seeking out these former head coaches to handle what they are not as adept to, so they can be more of an overseer rather than hands in the dirt for it all.
Like Mike McCarthy with the Chargers. I mean, I know they didn't have a head coaching change there, but there's a guy who was just a head coach this year, now being the offensive coordinator for the Chargers. So that gives Jim Harbaugh, a little bit more room to be that head coach.
You mean McDaniel?
Sorry, yeah, McDaniel. Sorry, Mike McDaniel. Sorry, Mike McCarthy. Mike McDaniel with the Chargers now, so that does make a difference there. So yeah, it's all about who they bring along with them that really helps shape and make the team. So, and there's a lot of different coordinator changes out there with these hires. So something to really just keep of note, because as we talked about before we got on this show, Ed, the Giants, they still need to fill in that offensive coordinator position. And as we heard last, I mean, Cliff Kingsbury may be getting that phone call. And we're with a young quarterback as well there with Jackson Dart. That to me it smells Cliff Kingsbury territory. He was there, Jaden Daniels' first year too, so in Washington. So I think that could be something of note, but you
and
really
Kyler
want
Murray's first year.
yes. So, and he was there. He was the quarterback's coach for USC with Caleb Williams there. So he's been around some studs, and maybe that's just a coincidence, or he's had his hand in it and really helped shape these quarterbacks. So I don't know. He still has yet to be hired. He's still out there. So maybe these teams know a little bit more than we do at the moment. So, I mean, is there anything else you guys want to add on this NFL head coaching or these coordinator positions at the moment?
The only thing I'm going to add is, as a Green Bay Packers fan, I'm going to curse Jeff Hafley for taking half of the staff.
It's all about who you know.
Oh, obviously. My goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the 49ers hired Raheem Morris, which is probably the second best option on the market, honestly, because there was Jim Schwartz, but apparently Schwartz, even though he's unhappy with the Browns, like most people are, he's still under contract with them for another year. So I think it was a good hire. They worked together in Washington, I believe. So they're friends with each other. I think it's a good hire. So
I,
good, looking forward to it.
yeah.
One thing that I am interested to see is if the elevation of Joe Brady is just more of the same from Sean McDermott being there, or if it's truly going to be a change in philosophy, because Joe Brady's been there for a couple of years now with Josh Allen. Does elevating him to head coach status, does that change the trajectory for what the Bills are able to accomplish in the 2026 season, or is it going to be yet another failed attempt to make it to the Super Bowl?
I would imagine they have a vision there, and I think it's a little bit different as to what they have already experienced. But I mean, I could be wrong. Was it them? No, it was the Eagles that poached one of your guys' Ed,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
Sean Mannion,
yep.
who has been uh, the coordinator underneath Matt LaFleur uh, over the past, a couple seasons. For the most part, the LaFleur offense has been LaFleur's offense.
Mhm.
So this is just taking that information and moving it on. Now, does Mannion pull um, a Sean Payton and become his own guy as a head coach? It's going to take some time to see that, but I it's going to be an offense that is very similar to what you're seeing taking the league by storm, which is a lot of more run first, more play action, more getting your head around that type of stuff as opposed to the wide open, pedal to the metal, five wide type offenses that we've seen in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, it's about all I have right now with the head coaching rabbit hole. And I mean, I'm sure some things are subject to change, which we'll talk more at a later date. But something that I think really needs to be talked about right now because of the ripple effect that I am going to see taking place in the NFL, and that is the ESPN and NFL Network merger. We'll say ESPN purchase of the NFL Network. Yes, this is not deja vu. You did hear about this, many weeks ago or a couple months ago when it initially was announced. But just because it was announced doesn't mean that it actually happened. It needs to be uh, voted on. It needs to be approved. Well, it has officially been approved of ESPN's purchase of the NFL Network. And Ed, do you want to give the audience here kind of a cliff note of pretty much what transpired?
Sure. So a few months ago, uh, NFL the NFL Network, not the NFL itself, but the NFL Network, uh, came into an agreement with ESPN. So ESPN has a 10% stake in the NFL Network, and in turn, I'm sorry, the NFL will get a 10% equity stake in ESPN. In turn, all the talent, all the shows, uh, the content that the NFL Network is providing will be available through the ESPN app and direct streaming service that was launched earlier this year. So when that happens, you are going to see some carryover between different personalities, different content that's been created, one specifically that moves over to the other. You're going to see uh, NFL fantasy and ESPN fantasy get merged into one unit as opposed to two separate entities. And I think this is that portion is a play on ESPN having to drop the ESPN bet uh, scenario because of what happened a few months ago. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole at the moment, but overall, it is going to be more intertwined, and you could start to see NFL wanting to leverage their content over the various platforms that they are producing NFL games for. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see some conjoining effect with Paramount Plus, Peacock, Netflix, Prime, all being bundled at a later date.
Yeah, for sure. And Thaddeus, I think this really helps with someone in your situation. When I say that is because I know college football is not your forte, but I think this really is going to help because the red zone part of it can really make a play for college football. And I think as a young fan such as yourself, wouldn't you say that kind of helps bring the audience more involved on a college football standpoint?
Yeah, I think it does because as part of the deal, like Ed said, is you're going to be getting NFL Red Zone with your normal ESPN subscription. However, the problem is there were some specific games on NFL Network which were not on ESPN either, and they apparently did not get the rights for those games either. So you're going to be getting some games, but also losing some games as well. So it's kind of a bit of a trade off, but it could be a decent package. You know, ESPN Plus, $30 a month for what looks to be a lot of stuff. Personally, I think that's overpriced, but it could be beneficial for a lot of people. So it could be a new gateway. Like, also, one thing that hasn't been really talked about is merging the old NFL fantasy into the ESPN fantasy, which a lot of people use the ESPN fantasy. NFL fantasy hasn't been used a lot. Obviously, even though it's the official fantasy, a lot of others have been used a lot more. So I think it's actually a good thing that ESPN's been going to incorporate the NFL fantasy.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is just, I feel like, the start of the ripple effect that we're really going to see in it. But David, one thing that I have to ask you is who we hoping to see change with this takeover as far as some of the hosts?
Oh, wait. Can you hear me? Oh, okay. I'm not muted. Like the hosts. Like, what do you? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, like Mina Kimes. I mean, we hoping to
Oh
maybe
my
see a
goodness.
change there.
Oh my goodness. Yes, dude. I mean, quite frankly, an Acorn would be a better host than Mina Kimes, right, Ed?
Absolutely. The sooner she gets off my television and we replace her with the multitude of better qualified personalities from the
Yeah.
NFL Network, I'm
And like,
much happier about that.
my thing with Mina is that like I can handle if you're not good at your job, but Mina Kimes is also not a good person. Like, have you seen the things that she posts and the way that she'll go after certain people? It makes me wonder, like, why the hell do so many people defend this woman? Like, she doesn't give two craps about you. She is not a good person whatsoever. If you just look at the things that she says about certain fans.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people they get that platform and they think that they're right, you're wrong, and unfortunately, she has really taken that to an extreme. But it's I don't know. I feel like you need to be qualified to get positions. That's how it is in the real world too. I mean, we work jobs, and to be, to be advanced in at your profession, you need to be qualified for that position. And there are just many uh, announcers or analysts out there that just were not qualified. They were practically given it, and I just sometimes really feel like she's one of them. And a lot of times nowadays, and hopefully I'm not crossing a line here, is you're good looking, you're hired, and I just don't get that a lot. And I mean, it is what it is, but I do hope that we do see some of these changes take place because we really do
I
need to
mean,
see it.
Honestly, Matthew, there is. I mean, whether people want to hear it or not, there is some truth to that. I mean, you think Joy Taylor got hired for her intellectual ability?
Oh man, yep. I wonder why, but
I think we've been down that rabbit hole.
yeah, but
Yeah.
this is one thing that I'll say, and it has nothing to do with the position I am in, but this could be a hot take. But just because you played the game does not always mean that you are qualified for a position as being an analyst. Okay, I really
Yeah.
want to put that out there because yes, you may be able to give certain insights to the game, and I will say that, but sometimes I just don't feel like you are the most qualified in some of these positions. And David, I'll let you go on a quick rant here because we saw a former player uh, come out with a very absurd take with the Cleveland Browns. So I'll go ahead and give you the floor here if you want to go ahead and let us know how you feel about that.
So a few days ago, um, Emmanuel Acho on his show straight up said that 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 Shador Sanders should not listen to Todd Monken. Or I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he's putting himself in the shoes of Shador Sanders, and he's saying like, listen, Todd Monken as an offensive coordinator, yeah, obviously he's proved himself. He helped Lamar have an MVP season. He's proved himself as an OC, but as a head coach, what have you done for me? Like, what have you done as a head coach? Well, did Emmanuel Acho forget that 99% of head coaches started off as coordinators? Like, does he think that people just become head coaches out of a whim? And it just, there's hot takes and then there's rage bait. Because there's no way that Emmanuel Acho actually believes half the things he says, or he doesn't believe 90% of the things he says. Because, like I said, does he actually think, like, does he not realize that most coaches started off as coordinators? And Ed, let me ask you this: you know who one of the head coaches is? Mike McDonald for the Super Bowl. You know what he was before he was head coach?
He was a defensive coordinator.
Yes. Now, can you imagine if the Seahawks had listened to Emmanuel Acho and said, "Gee, I don't know, Mike McDonald. I mean, clearly you have more than proven yourself as a defensive guy, but you've never been a head coach." They would have missed out on hiring a guy who would lead them to the Super Bowl 2 years later. So, Ed, I got to ask you, like, again, there's clickbait, or excuse me, there's hot takes, there's rage takes, and you know what? I can respect the fact that at the end of the day, Emmanuel Acho's got to do what he's got to do to make money. I mean, we're talking about it, so in a way, we're kind of cashing his check. But even so, like, how can anybody come to that conclusion? Yeah,
So I have the unique perspective of seeing a coordinator become a head coach to one of uh, to a future Hall of Famer. So at that point, when Matt LaFleur came to Green Bay to be the head coach for Aaron Rodgers, do you think that Aaron Rodgers really sat there and said, "I'm not going to listen to you at all just because you have this position"? No, he is in a Aaron Rodgers was in a position to where he needed to talk and have that communication with the head coach. Yes, the head coach doesn't have the experience of being on the field that Aaron Rodgers did at the time, but that doesn't mean that he's any less qualified to be the head coach because guess what? The Green Bay Packers thought that he would be a good fit. And lo and behold, he has been up to this point. So for any player to not pay attention to a head coach because somebody who's doing podcasting, any, including us, if we ever told a player to not listen to a head coach, they would spit in our face because we we're not in the building. We are not in the building that they are having those conversations in. So what Emmanuel what uh, what Emmanuel Acho did, that is part of his MO from the time that he's been on television when he was on the show with Wiley. He was always that counterpoint of, oh, because you're this person, you shouldn't listen to these people. And even though it has not been said, I feel like there is a certain uh, tint to this conversation that he is providing that has to do with race more so than just actual qualifications. So, because Shador Sanders is a black quarterback, that he shouldn't have to listen to a white head coach. And I'm sorry, that is the dumbest take of all time, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing too. I was going to make a couple of points, but I don't remember what one of them was. But one point I'll make is didn't didn't Emmanuel Lacho have like only like what 22 tackles his entire career? So Emmanuel Lacho, why the heck should we listen to you? You played the game and you sucked at it.
He got injured and never played again, but that's a whole different thing. His
Okay,
brother played a long
fair
time.
enough. Oh, I remember the other point I was going to make, and then we can move on. Like even for his spiel, for some people it can work. Like Skip Bayless is almost the exact same way. Like Skip Bayless has the most nonsensical takes, but Skip Bayless is also entertaining as hell, so it works with them. There is nothing entertaining about Emmanuel Acho whatsoever. He's just very cringe. Like there is no redeeming quality about him whatsoever.
Well, we talk about how everyone wants to, hire the next Sean McVay. Well, everyone also wants to be the next Skip Bayless or the Stephen A. Smith, and a lot
Yeah,
of them fall short of that. I'll be honest. So, just how people want, it's you have to be original, and a lot of people they just try to follow other people's shoes, and unfortunately, they're just not meant for it. So,
And Thaddeus, have you noticed that the number of podcasters out there that are really trying to take this tactic of putting out these takes that on the surface, even on the surface, look just idiotic, but somehow it gets views because it's it's out there and it's somebody that is somewhat preeminent in the podcasting world.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot. Can you still hear me?
yes,
Yes.
Okay. I have seen that a lot, and it's just a little bit of like the tired,
you too, man. Thank you.
tired, takes that people kind of recycle through, because they have to get clicks. We've seen with the social media, the internet era, a lot more people are moving toward smaller podcasters or things that just pop up on the YouTube feed instead of going to an actual like dedicated specific TV channel for getting their takes from. And now what these people have to do is they have to either A, recycle their takes, or B, make them as crazy as possible. And obviously we do have that with the some of the smaller podcasters as well because they have to get views, you know, um, true news, never made a paper sell. That saying still rings rings through to today. So you won't get a lot of views if you don't say something crazy. But at the same time, people are kind of tired of these takes. Like, why are you saying something so ridiculous?
well, yeah. Why are you saying something so ridiculous? But also, why is a decision so ridiculous being made? And the way where I'm getting on this is, we were just kind of talking about him is Shador Sanders going to the Pro Bowl. Like, that's just ridiculous to me. But that's where we're at now. That really is where we're at in the NFL, and it's just such a shame. And speaking of crazy things, we have to at least bring it up once on this show. Bill Belichick not being a first ballot Hall of Fame, whether you hate him or you love him, that guy is a first ballot Hall of Famer, and it's just sad that here we are now seeing on the voting committee that this is where the ridiculous has now come to, is that he's a Hall of Famer in all of our books, and hopefully that's good enough for him. But it's just sad that here we are seeing him not be a first ballot Hall of Fame. And some of the reasonings we've seen behind it is just so absurd, because I can guarantee you when it comes to the time Tom Brady gets voted in, he will get that vote. So, Ed, I can see you're in agreement and you've got some thoughts, so feel free to
Yeah.
share them.
So the whole idea of him being a first ballot Hall of Famer versus a Hall of Famer just in general, I it makes for storytelling right now, But when you start looking at him being in the Hall of Fame, say 10 years from now, does anybody care that he was on the first ballot? No. Nobody's going to care. The only thing that they're going to care about is that they will see his face in the bust room in Canton, Ohio, at the NFL Hall of Fame. So whether it's this year, whether it's next year, I think that's the only part that matters. I think the people that were voting for this go around, they did not include him as a quote punishment for being a quote bad guy to them while he was head coach of the Patriots, and even uh, somewhat stodgy as the coordinator for the Giants when he won the 2 Super Bowls under Bill Parcells.
Speaking of coaching trees, Bill Parcells.
It all goes back to him.
Yeah, it all goes back. So, yeah, it's just sad to see at that level where we're seeing these outrageous takes being taking place. But
Yeah,
before we go
imagine this. Imagine you're living in a year where Shador Sanders is a Pro Bowler and Bill Belichick is not a first ballot Hall of Famer.
mind is blown, but we will continue to see crazy things. Before we hop off this show, I just want quick predictions on these two categories as we are getting ready to see it take place. Ed, MVP, who's going to be announced this upcoming weekend?
It's got to be Matthew Stafford. He's it. I think the voting community for this particular award has they've shown that they will take a younger player and name him MVP, but we're talking like Lamar Jackson uh, type explosiveness or Mike Vick type explosiveness, not Drake May who just runs his offense against lesser competition. When you start looking at what Matthew Stafford accomplished this year, remember he is a guy that almost missed the entire season with back surgery. So he decided to play through it, and he had maybe the best year of his career, stats wise. Uh, Even though he didn't win a Super Bowl, that would be his best year. But one of the best years that he's ever had, and to have him not be the MVP this year, I think would be a travesty.
Thaddeus, all I know is if Stafford does win the MVP, he has the perfect opportunity to pull the Mike Tyson quote. I broke my back. This dude played with like a broken back out there, and I really hope that he says that. But would you agree with Ed? Do you think Stafford is the MVP?
Yeah, I think so. It was looking like May could win it. After the Rams lost to the Seahawks and lost the chance at that the number one seed. But then in these playoffs, I think the pendulum might have swung back in Stafford's favor because May looked really good, but he had what David kept on saying, the Patriots play the cupcake schedule, one of the worst schedules anyone's ever seen. And then Stafford, was putting up great numbers, and he continued to do so into the playoffs. And the crazy stats that were coming out was like he's the first quarterback in NFL history to throw for over 350 yards, 3 touchdowns. The team doesn't turn it over, and they still lose, right? So he was doing all he could to give his team a chance to win. So I agree that I really think Stafford's going to win MVP.
David, really quick, head coach of the year. Who gets it?
Mike McDonald, without question. That was who I said a few weeks ago, and I'm sticking with it.
All righty. So, yeah, I mean, we're gonna find out this upcoming week and who these awards are going to go to, and who's going to win the Super Bowl. So, stay tuned for our next episode as we talk about the Super Bowl preview, guys. We appreciate you tuning in. Please continue to hit that like and subscribe button. We do appreciate you guys always being here and supporting us. Make sure that you let us know your thoughts as well in the comments section. But till next time, guys, that's the final whistle. We'll catch you next week.